Welcome back to the First Gnostic Church of Christ. We are on video number 10, the read and commentary on the origin of the world. In our last video, we brought forth some pretty fantastical ideas and concepts. Among them, the understanding of the phoenix, the water animals, and the bulls of Egypt. We came to understand the bulls of Egypt to represent main luminaries, the sun and the moon, which is Apophis in Greek mythology, which represents ultimately the life force. We came to understand the phoenix being the water serpent, or the seraphim race, essentially. And that mankind also is a type of phoenix, in that we were originally in the pleroma. We then were descended to the place known as the Garden of Eden, which is the Garden of Gon, or what we call Atlantis. We spent some time there when we were created by Elohim, which are made up of Zoe, Sophia, and the Christ, Sabaoth, and a number of other aeons that all went about to bring forth the will of the Father and Mother, to bring this about. And we spent some time there until ultimately being cast into this realm, known as the Kenoma, which is the Garden of Gon, or in some other languages known as Gaia, which is this Earth, the prison planet. And this is where we are now, and we are in that stage called the stage of the worm, which is just before the worm gets consumed by the fire and then turns into ashes. And from the ashes, mankind rises again. Now, however you want to understand how the seraphim had communication, connection, and relationship with mankind is up to you. As to whether that was actual some type of intercourse, whether it be verbal or otherwise, that is up to you to interpret from those scriptures. That is not, again, as important as just understand the ultimate message here from that last video was that mankind had gone through 3 stages. And we're in that 3rd stage now, where it talks about the 3 kinds of phoenixes of paradise. The first is immortal, the second attains 1,000 years, and that was what man was able to do prior. His natural state in the Garden of Eden, which is essentially Atlantis, not the Garden of Eden that Orthodox Christianity consider where mankind was somewhere in Mesopotamia, but rather another place. Where that place is, we do not know. However, the Gnostic text tells us a remnant of that exists only in Egypt, and we know the most outstanding thing existing in Egypt today, through the historical past that we know, are the pyramids. And so this tells us a little bit about what that place called the Garden of Eden or / Atlantis might have been like. Now, we spent some time there, and the man was cast down. Now, I want to highlight this has been written in all cultures in different ways, whether it be Sumerian, whether it be Chinese, whether it be Egyptian, Greek, you name it. All cultures carry this understanding of the serpent or / the dragon, who in some way interacted with humanity to bring forth a mixture of a blessing / curse. And so this is part of our psychic self. This is part of our understanding. We did live approximately about 1,000 years. Somewhere along the way, we were cast down, and the rulers went about to shorten our lives. And this is where we pick up under that next section called Error and Ignorance Enter Human History. So ignorance is the beginning of suffering. Ignorance is the cause of all suffering. Ignorance is also the cause of ultimately death and depletion. Ignorance is, of course, the opposite of gnosis, which is the beginning of life and healing and immortality. Ignorance entered into human history. And here it says, "Let us come back to the rulers of whom we spoke, that we might present an explanation of them." Now here, the writer is inviting us to think about who exactly are these 7 rulers, and why are they important to humanity. "For when the 7 rulers were cast from their heavens down upon the earth, they created for themselves angels, many demonic angels to serve them." Now, these 7 rulers are presumably here still because they were cast down to this earth. So they work in secret to keep humanity enslaved, essentially keeping man ignorant. They created themselves angels and many demonic angels to serve them. And these angels essentially are legions of angels and legions of demons who create religions, or what we call religions, to have man follow after that second beast, so that the second beast may give the first beast power to rule over humanity. So everybody takes the mark, else they cannot survive in this realm called the Kenoma. You see, the first beast, of course, being the political apparatus, or the powers that be, the governments of the world, work to keep humanity under control. And that beast that gives power to the first beast, talked about in Revelation, is, of course, religion. And we talked a lot about in other videos how the demiurge goes about to create that type of system where it hoodwinks and fools millions and billions of people and the masses to follow after them and to fight to the death, defending them. These angels and demons that Yaldabaoth and the seven rulers goes about to create. But these demons taught humankind many errors with magic and potions and idolatry. And this is talking about worshiping rock stars and political stars and football stars, you name it, and shedding of blood. This is going to wars and altars and temples. This is religion and sacrifices, whether it be sacrificing to Allah or Jehovah or Baal, you name it. Throughout history, there has been millions of people slaughtered in the name of gods. And this is even going to war in the name of God. Because ultimately, what these powers that be, these seven rulers, want, along with Yaldabaoth, is to shorten humanity's life and to confound them and keep them in fear and terror. And the more humanity can be shown to shed blood for these rulers, the more these rulers know they still have power and control over humanity. And this is why they seek out to get man to be under control and kill in the name of gods, because it lets them know they still have power. And it also shortens humanity's life, because the longer man is able to live, the more they're able to gain experience and knowledge. So by shortening man's life, they can stay in ignorance. On top of that, they create libations so that man gets drunk on all kinds of things, whether it be lust, whether it be alcohol, whether it be drugs, you name it. Keep man in a state where he does not have to take responsibility or accountability or to go within to do the work. And libations to all the demons of the earth, having as their co-worker fate. And the co-worker here are the 12 constellations, the configurations. This was an actual contract between Yaldabaoth and Sabaoth. Why would Sabaoth make a contract with Yaldabaoth to bring about the constellation? Because this was Sabaoth's way of injecting some degree of order into this chaos that Yaldabaoth had brought about, who came into being according to the agreement by the gods of injustice. And remember, the gods of injustice, Yaldabaoth and his minions, and justice with his Sabaoth, which is the son of Yaldabaoth, and his called the hosts. And thus, when all the world came into being, it wandered astray in distraction throughout all time. For all the people who are on earth serve the demons from the creation until the consummation of the age. You see, we are all serving these demons, and we all have the mark of the beast. Our hands are all part of this, you see. We have our hands in the mud. But both the angels of justice and the people of injustice. You see, it's both. It's everybody, whether you be of the people of justice or the people of injustice. We're all jointly responsible. Thus, the world came to be in distraction and ignorance and stupor. They all erred until the appearance of the true human. Now, that's the very beginning of when the first human brought truth. That all of these gods that you've been following, they are not the true God, the true Father. And the only one that presented that, the new face of God, which is a God of love, that is perfect and loves you just the way you are, created you sons and daughters of God, was Christ. He's the only one that presented that face of God to humanity, the true face of God. Everyone else prior, whether it be Jehovah, whether it be Baal, whether it be, you name it, whatever gods, goddesses that were created, destructive forces, they all were not the true face of God. Before I continue, I think it's important for us to understand these seven rulers. How you want to understand them is up to you. Again, remember, don't get caught up in the messenger and worshiping the messenger and putting all your faith into the vehicle or the medium. It's more important to understand the message. And the messenger can come in many ways. It can come through astrology. It can come through your different chakra. It can come through whatever your art is, however you find your pathway of truth. That's perfectly fine. That's right for you, and no one should condemn you for it, so long as you are utilizing that in a way that is promoting gnosis, well-being, love, and all the things that Christ set forth as an example to follow. Let's go over to the Apocryphon of John, the long version, which is also known as the Secret Book of John, and it's going to highlight for us very clearly what are these seven rulers, what are their powers. Now, I do this not so you may gain power from these rulers. You do not want to make a contract with these rulers. They are beyond your imagination in terms of power. They are extremely dangerous. There are consequences to dealing with these seven rulers. They have extraordinarily unimaginable power. Humankind are infants compared to them. So I admonish you not to deal with them. But it is very important for us to understand who they are. So you understand how they work, and you can see it. And you'll be more aware of what's going on around you and which of these rulers is working. So I'm going to pick up here from verse 11, Secret Book of John, the long version, and we're going to read right under the section where it talks about the authorities, and the 12 authorities referring to the 12 constellations. Here are the 7 kings over the seven heavens, one per firmament of heaven. Remember, there are 7 heavens that are below the Holy Souls realm, and then above the Holy Souls realm is the pleroma, and 5 over the depth of the abyss, so that they might rule. The 7 kings are the ones that have been cast down to this realm. The 5 that are underneath are in the abyss, so they are beneath the earth. Now, however you want to think of that, if you want to think of it literally beneath the earth or metaphorically, that's perfectly fine. That's not going to make or break your ability for gnosis and finding your pathway. If you want to understand the pathway, it's not what you don't or do know about who was what, where, and when. What is ultimately important is the pathway that Christ set forth. Verse 12, and he divided his fire among them. That's the 12. But here we're only concerned about the 7 that were cast down here to earth, the 7 rulers. But he did not send them anything from the power of the light which he had received from his mother, for he is ignorant darkness. In other words, he didn't know how to give them that kind of power of gnosis. When the light mixed with the darkness, it caused the darkness to shine. But when the darkness mixed with the light, it darkened the light, so that it became neither light nor dark, but it was weak. And this is the kind of understanding, a weaker logos, a weaker logic that this Yaldabaoth has and his minions. This is the power they use, you see. So they are ignorant to some degree, but don't be fooled. They're extremely crafty and extremely intelligent. Now, intelligence and wisdom are 2 different things. Intelligence and gnosis are 2 different things. Intelligence is the ability to take agency of being aware and using and manipulating things around you. That's intelligence. Gnosis is something altogether different. Gnosis is tuning into the truth within and knowing your power and not relying from without. But intelligence is a different thing. In fact, the word intelligence is made up of 2 words, intellect and agency. And so this is what we talk about when we talk about intelligence, is the ability to use things and manipulate things on the outside as a type of agency. That's intelligence. When we talk about like a bird who can manipulate something or maybe create a nest, we say that has a type of intelligence. Now, this weak ruler has 3 names. The first is Yaldabaoth, the second is Saklos, the third is Samiel. He is impious in his madness, she who dwells in him. For he said, am God, and no other God exists except me, since he is ignorant of the place from which his strength had come. And the rulers created 7 powers from themselves. So there's 7 of those rulers, and they each one created 7 powers, and those 7 powers times 7 equal 49, and those are the 49 times that one must forgive those who have sinned against you, meaning, in other words, those that missed the mark with you of understanding. What Christ is ultimately saying is to cover the sins of these 7 powers from these 7 rulers. And the powers created for each of them 7 angels, until they have produced 365 angels, meaning covering the 365 days of the year. These 7 rulers have bodies of the names. The first is a Thoth, and so he is over the domain of writing and scribes. We also have an equivalent of that we understand as Thoth in Egypt. He has a sheep's face. And when we think about a sheep, we think about someone that follows, right? So who does he follow after? Of course, he follows after Yaldabaoth. He's the first of them. Yaldabaoth gives him a command, and then he turns around and gives a command to the other 6. And then they give a command to their many angels and demons. And so it's hierarchical. That's how they work. The second is Eloel. He has a donkey's face. And so here, when we think about donkey, we're thinking about someone who's just completely has no will, is complacent, and ignorant. The third is Astaphios. He has a hyena's face. And this is someone that is sly and crafty and always giggling at the wrong things. You see, they're just malicious. The fourth is Yao. He has a serpent's face with 7 heads. Now the 5th is Sabaoth. He has a serpent's face. Now, remember, Sabaoth is the son of Yaldabaoth, and he ultimately rebels and leaving behind 6 rulers. And Sabaoth eventually is able to go to the 7th heaven, and where Zoe Sophia visits him and instructs him on what's above the 7th heaven. And that's when he makes the contract with his father, the agreement called the Configurations of Fate, which is the constellation that humanity is under that contract. But unknown to Yaldabaoth, this configuration that he believes is going to give him power is actually the thing that's going to undo him. But he doesn't, of course, understand this. And so Sabaoth, he has a serpent's face. Sabaoth goes about to create the seraphim in that race of beings that intermingled with humanity. The sixth is Adonai. He has a monkey's face, so he's a joker, a prankster. The seventh is Sabbaty. He has a fiery face which shines. This is the Habdomad of the week, and Habdomad essentially means the 7 days of the week. But Yaldabaoth possessed a multitude of faces, adding up to more than all of them, so that when he is in the midst of the seraphim, he could masquerade in front of them all at will. Now, he wants to masquerade in front of the seraphim. Why are the seraphim being pointed out among all of the different angels, among all the Archons? And he senses that out of all of those creatures, the seraphim are the ones he needs to be most afraid of. So he wants to parade in front of them to show his power. Under verse 13, talks about these 7 powers and what they do exactly. These 7 powers are under the domain of both Sabaoth and Yaldabaoth. And so they have both good and evil in them. The very things that we talked about earlier that undo humanity, all the trickery in the monkey's face, the donkey's face, so forth and so on, also contain within it the 7 powers that support humanity. And he mixed with the authorities who dwell with him. And so through his thinking and his speaking, 7 powers came into being. And remember, again, Yaldabaoth, Demiurge, is both the god of good and evil. And so he also has good in him. And he named the powers one after another, beginning with the highest as follows. First is goodness, Christhood, with the first authority, Athoth. So this he created as a way in which he could bring about a way to set forth problem, action, solution. Create a problem, set forth a solution, send forth a leader who looks like a hero figure, in this case a goodness or Christ type figure, and then take action. And then of course you become the hero. So that's the first authority, Athoth. The second is pronoia. Now this is not the same pronoia, was created or emanated from the monad. This is a different pronoia. This is the guise of Elo, who is the donkey's face. And so he comes in the guise of, well, I am going to do something that's good for you. So I'm going to give you free medicine. But he doesn't say anything to you about the side effects. You see, so this is what he does. He comes with a blank face, like a donkey's face, and just presents it to you as a matter of fact. And like he just, no personal self-interest, when in fact, he's completely doing it for himself. The third is divinity, with the third one, astropheo. And then we talked about, that's the hyena's face. Comes at you with, I will make you into a god. I'll make you into a diva. And this is what astropheo will be able to offer you. And so this is likely one of the parts of Satan that Satan was making up all the adversaries of the monad, mother god, when Christ was visited and being offered all of the kingdoms of the world. I will make you into a king. I'll make you into someone divine, essentially. And working alongside with fourth is lordship, which is Yao. And so this is one of the sons named after Yahweh, of course. And this is the Lord God. And so I will make you more than even a king or a divine king. I will make you into a Lord. The fifth is the kingdom with the fifth one, Sabaoth. And this is all it says. You see, the kingdom that's being offered is the kingdom of God. And so Sabaoth transcends. The sixth is envy. The sixth one, Adonai. And so here he goes about to have you covet everything else that you don't have. He goes about to create consumerism and competition. The seventh is understanding, with the seventh Sabbation. And here this individual sets forth all of the institutions that seem to be like the mother nanny state that's looking after you and understand your demise and will work to make it seem like they're on your side, you see. But ultimately, they want to understand you for their own personal gain. For these are those who have a firmament corresponding to each aeon. And this is why we have these correspondences. Each one of these names seem familiar to us. For example, pronoia, Christ, divinity, lordship, etc., etc. You see, all of these have their correspondences from the pleroma. Again, you have to remember Yaldabaoth is going about to try to fashion things off the likeness of what is in the pleroma. These were named according to the glory of those who belong to heaven for the destruction of the powers. Now these were created, unknown to Yaldabaoth, to give him the impression he has power, when in fact it was for his destruction. These were named according to the glory of those who belong to heaven for the destruction of the powers. You see that? The names which they were given by the chief begetter had power in them, but the names which were given to them according to the glory of those who belong to heaven are for them destruction and powerlessness. So the names themselves have a fake power, really is what's ultimately being said here, an empty power that ultimately leads to their destruction. So they believe in a facade. Thus they have two names. So they have both a name of who they really are, their true face, which we talked about earlier, different faces, the face of a donkey, face of a sheep, and then their false name that they present, a facade. That's what's being talked about here, thus the two names. He ordered everything following the likeness of the first aeons, which had come into being, so that he might create them in the indestructible pattern, not because he had seen the indestructible ones, but the power in him, which he had gotten from his mother, bore in him the likeness of the world. So in other words, he did it because he thought that, well, if I construct it after the indestructible, then I myself will be indestructible. But he didn't really know how to do it, so it essentially led to ruin. So there you have it. I do encourage you to read that as often as you can and meditate on it, and you will be able to understand more fully the way the powers that be use their dark arts to keep man captivated and imprisoned. And so let's continue. Enough for you to this point. Next we shall consider our world so that we might complete the discussion of its structure and its government in a precise manner. Then it will be clear how belief in hidden things, which have been apparent from the foundation to the consummation of age, came about. What are these hidden things? Well, they do these things in secret. They're plotting in secret. You ever think about why is the world the way it is? Why is the world on the brink of destruction? Why is that? Are we, as human beings, that stupid, really? Well, because the powers behind the scenes are constantly in a feverish pitch to keep us completely enthralled with fear and captivity. The blessed innocent spirits. Now I come to the main points about immortal humankind. I shall explain why the beings belong to the immortal human are here. Now there are those beings that are here among us that are immortal humans. Now we're not talking about the flesh body, we're talking about the spiritual beings that have their gnosis awake. And why are they walking among the walking dead? Why should they suffer among them? Essentially what's being asked here. When a multitude of people came into being through Adam, who was fashioned, and from matter, and when the world was filled, the rulers reigned over them. Now this is really talking about prior to our current human existence, there was a different existence where the world was filled with people. You see, when the world was filled. And that's why in Genesis chapter 1 talks about replenishing the earth. It doesn't say fill the earth, it says replenish it, refill it. The rulers reigned over it, and that is to say they held it in ignorance. So in other words, they didn't understand at that time the power that Adam, the human race, had. So they treated them much differently than they do today. They weren't manipulating them. They weren't treating them poorly or badly. They pretty much left them alone. And thus man was able to live 1,000 years and to carry us so. And we filled the earth. And that's what it's essentially saying here. Now what is the cause? It is this. Since the immortal Father knows that deficiency of truth came into being among the eternal realms and their worlds, when he wanted to bring to naught the rulers of destruction by means of their fashioned creatures, he sent your likenesses, namely, the blessed little guileless spirits down to the world of destruction. When Christ talks about you are being chosen and you've been given a name and you've been called, you are one of those beings where your gnosis has been awoken, and you are here in this realm to bring people to gnosis, and you're here to help heal the world. That's why you're here, and why you must suffer. You must do that walk that Christ asked you to walk, and to share his message, and to share that God loves you just the way you are. God doesn't hate you. There's no hellfire, eternal hellfire. There's no pearly gates with heaven where you live forever in a cloud and you're bored all day. But this is an inner work. You're perfect just the way you are, and you only need to bring forth your accomplishment, your calling, and to share that with other people so that we may experience a healing and unplugging from the powers that be. They are not strangers to knowledge, for all knowledge is in an angel who appears before them, who stands in front of the Father, and is not powerless to give them knowledge. So don't worry about what you'll have to say. If you are talking to people about gnosis, you just open your mouth, it will come forth what needs to be said. Immediately, whenever they appear in the world of destruction, they will first reveal the pattern of incorruptibility, condemnation of the rulers and their powers. Essentially, at first, these beings will come forth talking about this thing called the goodness of God. This is what Christ first presented, the incorruptibility, meaning it's not corrupt, it's pure, it has no evil thought, it has no ideas of jealousy and hate, and wanting to burn people forever and ever. So this is the beginning. This is what first gets revealed, you see. They will first reveal the pattern of incorruptibility for condemnation of the rulers and their powers. And by just revealing that truth, the rulers are condemned. And that's when man begins to understand they have been misled all this time. Moreover, when the blessed ones appeared in the fashioned bodies of the authorities, they were envied. Because you see, the powers that be know this. They see that light that's shining. And they're envious of it. They covet it because it's something they don't have. Because of envy, the authorities mixed their seed with them to defile them. This is why they came in among man. They were trying to mix in with mankind so that mankind would be defiled. But they didn't understand that that's not the way it works. The spirit doesn't come from the flesh body. It doesn't come through intercourse. But they were not able. Moreover, when the blessed ones appeared in their light, they appeared distinctively, and each one of them from their land revealed their knowledge of the assembly that appeared in the fashioned bodies of destruction. Now, what's being said here? It's saying that the powers that be were looking for a pattern. So they studied people and they put them in different groups. You're over here. You're a male. You're a female. You're gay. You're straight. You're white. You're black. You're these different races. Because what they wanted to do is they wanted to figure out, where did this light come from? Does it reside in some races and not others? And they kept creating all of these hierarchies. You see, this race is superior to that race, and they pitted against each other because they wanted to study and witness them and see what was going on. But what they didn't understand, it wasn't on the outside. It wasn't a matter of what humankind looked like, or what they were physically attracted to, or whether they're male or female, or whether they're black or white. None of that was consequential in terms of what is this thing called light. The assembly was found to have every seed because of the seed of the authorities that was mixed with it. And what they didn't understand is by mixing with all of the different seeds, they also seeded within those beings the knowledge that was within those authorities. You see, knowledge is held within everything. And when there's any kind of interaction, or quote-unquote intercourse, however you want to think of that, physically, emotionally, spiritually, then you're interchanging knowledge. That's really what's happening, you see. Then the Savior made all of them one. When Christ came, he did away with male, female, black, white, gay, straight, you name it. He got rid of it. Because he told us, once and for all, we are all united in purpose. And the spirits of these appeared, being superior and blessed, but varying in election, and many others are kingless and superior to everyone who was before them. So when you finally reach that state of election, meaning that Christ chose you, meaning that when saying he chose you is meaning that he understands that you have gnosis and you're ready. And he then says you are released. You no longer need a king. You're kingless. You see, humankind doesn't need leaders. We don't need them. But, of course, I'm saying that in a way that man has already ascended. But currently on this planet, unfortunately, mankind is nowhere near that, being kingless. Consequently, 4 races exist. There are 3 that belong to the kings of the 8th heaven. But the 4th race is kingless and perfect above them all. We already talked about the 3 races. We talked about the Hylic, which is the flesh-oriented. We talked about the psychic, which is the soul-oriented, and then, of course, the spiritual, which is in the 9th realm, which are the Christinos, and which is the pneumatic. And then finally, the last being, which is the perfect being, the perfect race. That's those that have entered into the kingdom of God, which is the pleroma. So those really are 4 races of being, but 3 races that exist outside the pleroma that's talked about in the tripartite tractate. For these will enter into the holy place of the Father, and they will reside in rest and eternal, ineffable glory and ceaseless joy. They are already kings. It's talking about that last being that's filled with the pleromic powers. Immortal within the mortal realm. They will pass judgment on the gods of chaos and their powers. Ultimately, it will be these that have reached that state that will bring about correction or redemption, if you want to call it that, ultimately, of everything that's been set forth by the demiurge and the 7 rulers or 7 powers. Okay, we're going to leave it there, and we'll pick up in our next video under the section Jesus, the Logos, the consummation of the age, and the apocalypse, the light is saved, and Gnostic return home. So there's 3 sections left. I think we'll be able to complete it in one last video. If not, then perhaps 2. All right, thanks for listening. We'll talk again soon. Bye-bye.